welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'll be showing you 3 really easy Dollar Tree Easter decor DIYs. All of today's projects are more of the rustic farmhouse style, so if you're into that, then I really think that you're gonna love these. If you do enjoy today's video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and I would love to hear in the comments down below which project from today's video is your favorite. If you guys want to see all 3 of my Easter DIYs, then please keep watching. For the first DIY, I'll be making an Easter egg wreath, and for this project I used 2 packs of these speckled eggs from Dollar Tree, a 10-inch wreath form, Spanish moss, reindeer moss, Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster, folk art chalk paint in Java, sage, and also in the color castle, paintbrushes, an old crafting toothbrush, raffia, jute, scissors, and my hot glue gun. I first started by painting 4 of these speckled eggs with my castle color chalk paint, and to speed up the painting process a little bit, I would paint half of the egg with this color, and then I used my hair dryer to dry that paint. I couldn't really set the eggs down since they are an odd shape. I would then paint the other side of the egg and then use my hair dryer to dry that, and I did do 2 coats of paint for this. And then I painted 4 more of these speckled eggs with my sage colored chalk paint, and I did the exact same steps as I did with the castle colored ones. I'd paint half of the egg, dry it with my hair dryer, paint the other half of the egg, dry it again, and then I did 4 more eggs in my plaster colored chalk paint the exact same way. And I did 2 coats of paint for all of my eggs. Once I had all of my eggs painted, I then went in with this old toothbrush that I used for crafting and my Java colored chalk paint, and I just dabbed that paint over all of the eggs to give them a nice speckled look. Next, I'm starting to assemble my wreath. I'm placing hot glue right on my wreath form and then placing one of my painted eggs over top of the glue to attach it. And then I'm continuing this step all the way around my wreath, and I'm spacing the eggs out enough that I can fit all 12 of them around the wreath form. After I have all of my eggs attached to my wreath form, I'm then placing hot glue on the sides of the wreath form and then sticking the Spanish moss right on top of the glue to fully attach it. And I'm continuing this step over and over again. And then in between the eggs, I'm putting hot glue right on the wreath form once again, but this time I'm placing the reindeer moss on top of it. So I'll have the Spanish moss going around the entire sides of the wreath form, and then between all of the eggs and around the eggs, I'm doing the hot glue and then placing the reindeer moss over top of that. I'm continuing those same steps until I have all of the sides of my wreath form filled with moss, and then in between all of my eggs. Then I'm flipping over my wreath, and then I'm filling all of the empty spaces that are on my wreath form with some Spanish moss. Once I have the back filled up, I'm then flipping it back over, and then any of the open spaces on the inner circle around all of the eggs, I'm just filling those in with the leftover reindeer moss that I have. Once I have all of my moss on, I'm then using some scissors to trim up around my entire wreath so that it looks a little bit more neat. You could leave your wreath just like this, but I wanted to add some raffia. So here I'm taking a few strands of the raffia and I'm tying it around the back side of my wreath to hold it into place. I'm then wrapping it around the front of my wreath in between the eggs. And I am doing this so the raffia sits loosely in between the eggs. And since my raffia pieces were kind of short, I just had to glue the ends of it down along the back side and then start a new piece. I continued that same step until I had the raffia wrapped around my eggs for my entire wreath. And I wrapped it around every few eggs, not every egg, and I really liked the way that it looked. For the final step, I'm making a hanger for my wreath. I'm taking 4 pieces of jute and I'm tying them around the top of my wreath, going between 2 of the eggs, just tying a knot for the length that I want my hanger, and then just cutting off the excess jute. Here is my Easter egg wreath all finished. This project was so inexpensive to do, and I think this looks just as good, if not better, than the wreaths that you would find in a retail store. Now moving on to DIY number 2, an Easter chalkboard. For this project, I used an 11 by 14 inch frame, a 4-pack of these carrots, Rust-Oleum chalkboard paint, Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster, folk art chalk paint in Java, paintbrushes, jute, a chalkboard marker, scissors, and my hot glue gun. For this project, I started by taking my entire frame apart. Once I got the glass piece out, I then took it outside and I sprayed it with my Rust-Oleum chalkboard paint. I did 2 really good coats on this, and I did let the coats dry in between. I waited probably about 15 to 20 minutes in between coats. I then painted my frame with my plaster color chalk paint, and I did have to do 2 coats of this paint. Once that paint was completely dry, I then went in with my Java colored chalk paint and my Dollar Tree stencil brush, and I dry brushed that paint right over top of my frame to give it a nice distressed look. And then after everything was dry, my chalkboard and my frame, I put everything back together. And then I'm gonna start assembling my garland to go on the top of my frame. I'm using the 4-pack of these like jute wrapped carrots that I got from Dollar Tree. I'm taking a piece of jute and I'm wrapping it around the very top of the carrot and then just tying a little knot to hold it into place. And then to make sure that everything stays nice and secure, I'm adding a little bit of hot glue at the very top. I'm then continuing those same steps when attaching the next 3 carrots to the strand of jute, and I did space the carrots out a few inches in between each carrot. After I have all of my carrots attached to my strand of jute, I'm then taking my garland and wrapping it around the very top of my frame to see how long I want it to be draped around the top, and then I'm just taking the ends of the jute and hot gluing them along the back side of the frame to hold everything into place. And for the last step, I'm writing the words Happy Easter, and I did end up drawing a little Easter egg on the side as well, but you could always do any kind of design or words that you want. Here is my Easter chalkboard all finished. Again, this was such an easy and inexpensive project, and it really didn't take much time to complete at all. And now for DIY number 3, a Happy Easter sign. For this project, I used 2 vertical love signs from Dollar Tree, wooden bunny ornaments, wood letters that spell out Happy Easter, Waverly chalk paint in plaster and also in ink, folk art chalk paint in the color Java and in Castle, paintbrushes, jute, sandpaper, wood filler, raffia, my hot glue gun, scissors, and 5 large popsicle sticks. For this one, I started by cutting off the fabric hangers that were on these signs and then just removed them. I then went in with my wood filler and filled in those holes. I'm just placing the wood filler on my finger and then pressing it into the holes, and I am using the back sides of these signs for this project. After the wood filler was completely dry, I then went in with some sandpaper and sanded on those areas and got any of that extra wood filler off until the areas were completely smooth. I also filled in the holes that were in the top of my bunny ornaments, and then once that wood filler was completely dry, I went in with my sandpaper once again and just sanded away any of the extra wood filler until those areas were completely smooth. Next, I painted all 3 of my wooden bunnies with my plaster color chalk paint, and I did have to do 2 coats of this paint, and I also made sure to paint around all of the edges of the ornaments as well. Now back to my vertical signs. I'm attaching both of them together. I'm laying 5 large popsicle sticks on the back and then just hot gluing the sticks onto the signs in the center so that it holds the 2 together. And I'm just continuing this step until I have all 5 popsicle sticks attached to the 2 signs. I'm now using my measuring tape to mark off what would be in the center of each sign, which was at 3 inches. I'm then taking a piece of painter's tape and I'm just putting that right on the 3-inch mark on the top part of the sign and then on the bottom part of the sign. I'm then using my measuring tape once again to mark off half of the 3-inch mark, which would be at 1.5. So I did 1.5 at the top and then 1.5 going from the bottom. I'm then laying a piece of painter's tape right at the very top of that 1.5 mark at the very top of my sign and then at the very bottom of my sign. In between my 2 top pieces of tape, I'm painting on my chalk paint in the color Sage. I'm then painting the same color Sage underneath the second piece of painter's tape. And in between my 2 bottom pieces of tape, I'm also painting that same color Sage on in between them. Once that paint has dried, I'm then peeling off the tape, and I'm reusing some of the tape. I'm taking the piece that you see here, and then I'm just moving it up a little bit because I'm going to be making some new strips to paint a second color on. I'm continuing to peel off the pieces of tape and then just moving the ones that I can reuse up a little bit or down a little bit to make new lines for the new colors that I'm going to be painting on. The strips of tape that I had peeled off, I just put over top of the sage color that I had already painted on just to kind of protect it, and I was making 2 new strips so that I could paint this castle color that you see me painting on right now. I did a strip on the top and then a strip on the bottom part. Once that was dry, I just peeled off all of my tape. Once again, I'm using more tape. I'm just covering up the areas that I've already painted on because I don't want to accidentally paint a new color on over top of an old color. So this is just to protect my strips that I've already made. I'm now painting on my plaster color chalk paint on the top strip, a middle strip, and then the bottom strips that are left over that I haven't painted yet. Once I have that paint on, then I'm just going to peel off the painter's tape after it's all dry. But I did realize after painting it on that I don't really have a pattern with my paint colors. I was supposed to do, or I was wanting to do, like the white color, the sage, and then castle, and then continue that same pattern, and I mixed them up somehow. So, oh well, it still looks fine to me. Next, I'm going in with my Java colored chalk paint and my Dollar Tree stencil brush, and I'm dry brushing this color around all of the edges of my sign, and then I'm also taking it on the flat front part of my sign as well, just to give it a distressed look. I'm then dry brushing my plaster color chalk paint on the darker colors on the sign. And here I am with some more tape. I'm placing a piece of painter's tape right on the lines between my colors, and then just placing another piece of tape right above that, and I'm leaving a very small space in between. I wanted to have a line of black going between each one of my colors. So to do that, I just made a little line. You could just draw one on yourself, but I was afraid that my line wasn't going to be straight. So originally I did the Sharpie marker in between, but I didn't really like how that looked. So for the next few pieces that I did, I just put the tape on, left a small space in between the tape, and then I used my chalk paint in the color ink and then just painted the line right on. And after that paint had completely dried, I just peeled the tape right off. Then to add a little bit more distressing, I took some more of that ink colored chalk paint and I dry brushed that over top of my entire sign. And then I took my plaster color chalk paint once again and I dry brushed a little bit more on top of the front of my sign over top of all of those black lines that I just painted on. Next, I'm painting all of my wood letters that spell out Happy Easter with my ink colored chalk paint, and I only had to do 1 coat of this paint when painting them on my letters. Once the paint has completely dried, I'm then placing my words on the front of my sign and just arranging them how I want them before I start gluing them down. To glue the letters down, I'm placing hot glue right on the back of the letter and then just pressing them down right into place. And I'm continuing this step until I have both words Happy Easter glued down onto my sign. For my wooden bunnies, I'm taking a double piece of jute and I'm tying it around the neck of the bunny and then just making a small bow. I'm then using some hot glue right underneath the bow to hold everything into place. Next, I'm taking 5 strands of jute and I'm wrapping them around the front side of my sign, and then I'm just hot gluing the ends of those 5 pieces of jute down along the back side of my sign on both sides. I'm continuing that same step with the 5 strands of jute onto the other side of my sign, doing the exact same thing. I was going to leave the sign just like this, but I decided to add a raffia bow. So I'm taking some strands of raffia and just making a really simple bow, and then just cutting off the long ends. Then to attach the bow, I'm placing hot glue right in the center above the words Happy Easter and attaching the bow. And for the last step, I'm making a hanger for my sign. I'm using 5 strands of jute and I've tied off a knot on both ends. And I've already pre-measured how long I want these strands of jute to be for my hanger. And then I'm taking some hot glue, placing it on both sides of the sign, and then just pressing both ends of the jute onto the glue to attach it. And this is my Happy Easter sign all finished. I really love how this one turned out, even though I messed up a little bit on my paint color pattern. I hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and I would love to hear in the comments down below which project from today's video is your favorite. If you're not subscribed, I hope that you would consider subscribing, and please hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of my future videos. And I would also love to hear what kinds of videos you guys are wanting to see from me here on my channel. Thank you so much for watching.